Let's dive right into this explainer on the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Picture this. At its absolute peak, Rome was the ultimate geopolitical superpower. We're talking about a finely tuned administrative machine that successfully governed nearly half the known world. They built an infrastructure and military apparatus that quite literally changed the entire trajectory of human history forever.
But that brings up a really staggering systemic mystery. How could the greatest empire on Earth just collapse? How does a machine of that immense magnitude, with roads and laws that basically built the modern world, ever fail? What kind of structural vulnerabilities can actually bring down a state that seemed completely invincible?
Section 1. Rise of an Empire. From a small settlement to a superpower.
So the evolution from just a tiny settlement on the Tiber River in 753 BC to a total global powerhouse by the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, it wasn't just about having a disciplined army. It was actually driven by a pretty radical structural strategy. They weaponized citizenship. As Rome relentlessly expanded over the decades, they didn't just conquer their foes, they assimilated them. By offering status and building really strong alliances, they turned defeated enemies into the very soldiers and infrastructure builders that pushed the empire to its absolute greatest strength.
Section 2. The Golden Age, reaching unparalleled strength.
Now look at this number, 60 million. At its peak, an estimated 60 million people lived under Roman rule. To put that into perspective for you, that was roughly a fifth of the entire world's population at the time. And the craziest part, it was all managed by a highly centralized administration that relied completely on analog communication. It was just a staggering logistical triumph.
And that logistical triumph was built on totally interconnected systems. Those thousands of miles of paved roads we always hear about, they weren't just for trade, they were basically arteries for rapid military deployment, letting legions cross entire continents in a matter of weeks. Then you have massive aqueducts bringing fresh water to millions, which allowed cities to thrive as these incredibly dense centers of trade and culture. That centralized wealth funded colossal engineering marvels like the Colosseum. Honestly, every single creation just reinforced their total control over the civilized world.
Section 3. The Empire cracks. The beginning of the end. The collapse, however, wasn't just some overnight catastrophic event. It was more like the compound interest of a failing state. It operated as this massive, compounding feedback loop. First, you get deep political instability and frequent changes of emperors, which bred widespread corruption. That corruption rapidly weakened the government and drained the treasury. So, to fund an insanely expensive military that was desperately trying to fend off border attacks, the state turned to heavy taxes and rampant inflation. This completely crushed the everyday citizen, effectively hollowing out the empire from the inside out.
But as the saying goes, no empire stays powerful forever. It's the ultimate historical lesson in institutional overreach, absolute proof that sheer size and a track record of past success cannot protect a society from its own internal rot.
Section 4. The Final Fall. A fractured superpower.
By AD 395, the administrative and economic weight of everything was just too much. It became physically impossible to govern from a single center, which forced a total division of the empire. On one side, you have the Eastern Roman Empire, which managed to stabilize its economy and actually remain strong for centuries. But on the other side, the Western Roman Empire. It was left to bear the brutal brunt of all those compounding crises we just discussed, continuing to weaken as its systems totally failed. And the definitive end for the West didn't come with some dramatic explosion. It was honestly more of a quiet whimper. Fast forward to AD 476, and the last Western Roman emperor was simply removed from power by a Germanic king. It wasn't the sudden apocalyptic destruction of a society, but just the formal death of an institution that had already been decaying for hundreds of years.
Section 5. An everlasting legacy. Rome never truly disappeared. Because here is the thing, even though the central administration collapsed, their structural blueprints completely survived. Think about it. The core concepts of modern governments, like having a republic and a senate, direct Roman inventions. Romance languages, French, Spanish, Italian, they're all essentially just evolved local dialects of Latin. From the architecture that inspires builders today to the very foundations of our global legal systems, the ghost of Rome is incredibly visible in our everyday reality. We saw earlier that no empire stays powerful forever.
The Romans built this massive, deeply interconnected system that seemed entirely invincible, yet it still buckled under the weight of its own compounding vulnerabilities. Looking at the immense complexity and all the systemic pressures of our own globalized world today, it really forces a critical reflection regarding the permanent